Well, hey everyone, this is Scott King over at Zimperium, and thanks so much for joining my preview of the mobile banking apps are not created equal. This webinar is going to be pretty casual. It's going to be 20-25 minutes, and I've got plenty of time for questions. If you have a question, just go ahead and answer it or ask it rather in the Q&A window in your Zoom window. And then I'll get to those as soon as I can and make sure that we follow along with all the context. I'll just answer it immediately if I can. If it's a short answer, if it's a long answer, then I'll wait till the end. But a little bit about what we're going to talk about today is kind of explains, the state of mobile banking, what the bankers are saying about it, what regulators are saying about it. We're going to go through some OWASP Mobile top 10 results as results of our scan. So what I did is I took 90 different mobile banking applications and put them through our Z3A service, and it scores them on security and privacy. And we'll go through that and the OWASP. We'll talk about some common security issues, what kind of permissions these apps are asking from you on your devices, some common privacy and data leakage issues, and then what you can do. And then we'll go along with, we'll look at some of the scan reports and take a look at what the summary says. And if you'd like to get a scan or look at Z3A or some of the other services that we offer, you can contact us after the webinar, and we'll go ahead and do that. But first of all, why are we really here, right? So, looking at the mobile operating system market share, you can see that, it steadily increased through, to 2017, 2018. Late 2018 really is when mobile device units peaked, right? You're not going to see Apple or Google really tout the number of devices shipped. What's going to happen is as the market really shifts from device offering more services, we're going to see mobile actually consuming more services than it does today. Mobile or m-commerce is really only 3 or 4% of total e-commerce, so there's plenty of room to grow. And so mobile banking, so if you look at kind of the kinetic journey of mobile banking over the years, about 55% of U.S. account holders, so these are people that have checking accounts or some type of banking account, about 55% of them actually access that via a mobile device. So it will consistently grow until it plateaus. More people will get banking services as bankers look to offer services for the underbanked or unbanked. You'll see those terms. And as they get down into the lower markets, those users will really be mobile first. If you look at some of the outlying areas, third world countries, they're really mobile first, and they did mobile banking way before we did. And so where is mobile banking also going? Well, criminals are going there. So criminals are going to mobile banking because that's where we're moving our money. So of the research that we looked at, 65% of the banks are being targeted by, this example is BankBot. So the first edition of BankBot looked to take advantage of the accessibility features on an Android device. The second version of BankBot, it actually captured the SMS two-factor authentication code. So if you were thinking you were defeating BankBot and you thought that the journey was over, well, the second edition actually was able to defeat two-factor, and you could log into the web using code sent to the same device. So in Europe, what they do is they have some independence of verification on the PDS2 derivative, and what they mean is you have to divide those two features. So they're looking out for you. So we'll see. I'm sure we'll see the same in the States pretty quick. So what do the banks say about cybersecurity? So Jamie Dimon, in his annual letter to shareholders, says the threat of cybersecurity may very well be the biggest threat to the U.S. financial system. And it's really because it's so complex. I mean, you think about all the different systems that, Mr. Dimon probably has at his bank. is, the servers, the infrastructure, the customers, they're pushing out services to unmanaged devices. They can't really manage the health of the device that a consumer has. Is it jailbroken or rooted? That's pretty elementary, but what type of Wi-Fi is he on? Is he using a safe network? What other apps are on his device? So, what other thing, app or intelligence or service is reading data from that device? So that's what they're looking at. And the Federal Reserve System, U.S. Federal Reserve, says, mobile banking may help to address some of the challenges, but, a well-designed and secure mobile platform is needed in order for it to be a reliable banking channel. So even, the regulators even state that, we really need to watch out to how we're pushing these services out, because it's so complex. We can't really see all the moving parts until it's too late, right? Because there are cyber criminals looking at all the moving parts, and they're looking for holes in the system. So, and they'll find those holes because the holes are valuable, right? So even Gartner says that mobile malware will constitute 30% of all malware. So this isn't just all mobile malware. They said if you took malware as a whole, 30% of it is going to be on the mobile devices. So you can find this in the Mobile Threat Defense Guide on Mobile Threat Defense Solutions. If you want a link to that report, just let me know, and I'll get you a link for a download. But even the analysts assume, because what happens is the mobile operating systems are still relatively immature, right? So there's more features, there's more functions that get introduced in with those functions. What happens is we introduce bugs into the system. So here are the number of bugs and CVEs registered for the last 18 months, right before I did all this research. And you can take a look at how many of these bugs are actually, very severe. And if you compare that with Android, it's relatively the same pattern, right? So if you look at, what type of bugs that these are the bugs that we know about, right? So you either, if you find a bug in the system, you either disclose it to the operating system manufacturer, Apple or Google, or you sell it to, on the black market, right? So an iOS bug is worth up to $2 million. So just ask WhatsApp. If you think about the WhatsApp vulnerability that was out 4 or 5 weeks ago, there was a flurry of activity of companies trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? Like, I didn't realize that this could happen. Now that it has happened, okay, now I have to figure out how to remediate that. So, that is definitely a viable concern. But of all the critical, CVEs that were registered in the past 18 months, so these are the ones that were patched in the same period. And if you look at the criticality, 62% of all the bugs that were patched over the last 18 months were critical. So this is code injection. This is buffer overflow. So if you look at the critical bugs, 72% of those allowed code injection. So this allows anybody, if they've correctly captured your traffic and, the moons align, they can just push code right into your device and read what you're doing, steal your data, look at credentials. Who knows how they're going to attack you or surveil you, right? So are they going to remain persistent on your device, or are they just looking for a nugget of information that day? And so the RSA Risk and Fraud Intelligence Service, this is a report that was out late last year. You can see the evolution of fraud. So 70% of fraud originated in a mobile browser or a mobile app in Q4 of 2018. So that will become more and more as more and more of our transactions move to mobile, and we trust it more. There's going to be more fraud, wrought in the system. So we really need to be sure and take a look at, what we're doing, because, we can trust it, but, we really need to verify that our trust is valid. So late last year, this is Verizon Mobile Security Index. You could see that 70% of the people that answered the survey are actually building their own apps. And then they asked them, said, okay, if you build your own app, are you concerned about insecure coding? Like, are you concerned about the health of your own app? Like 53% of these guys said yes. So yes, we do build, and yes, we are concerned about insecure coding because, again, it's just too complex. And what does the complexity buy you? Well, the complexity really takes a look at, you got to look at all the different systems. One of the most famous banking, hacks that happened over mobile was Tesco Bank. So Tesco Bank, they had a mobile app. Someone revealed weaknesses in the mobile app and actually used that in the back end to steal £2.5 million overnight from 9,000 different accounts. So completely viable that the mobile banking app exposes you, and those exposures can then be exploited, right? So this was this actually attack was over overnight. Even customers that didn't use the mobile app, right, because they just used the mobile app to find a vulnerability. So what can you do? So if you look on the left-hand side, what we're monitoring for in the operating system is how are attackers going to surveil or take advantage of your mobile app. What we're looking for is network traffic. We're looking for malicious activities on your system, right? So, no encryption, risky settings, malware, right? So what we're looking for is kinetic activity on your system on what changes. So if you can take a look at, if my network changes, obviously that is a route to attack, and then you can mitigate that. So look at mitigation examples. I can turn you off. I can shove you to the web channel. I can establish a VPN. I can do any kind of custom remediation, or I can just read the data, right? So I can read the data and then send it to the fraud team for them to investigate. So who's doing this right now? So there are global banks doing this to look at fraud via their mobile channel. So one bank actually installed this type of technology into their mobile app, and in 30 days what they found was 1,200 compromised devices. They found customers using compromised networks. They found rooted and jailbroken devices, even though they were doing root check and jailbreak detection prior, and then wrought with malicious apps. And these are just known malicious apps. So you can take a look at the number of dollars that they put through the system, and they told us about $1.1 billion of fraud was being monitored by looking at just the mobile channel. So what people are doing with their checking, if they're paying family, paying friends, what have you, right? So what did we do? So a little bit about the report. So again, the report is 90 different applications from 45 banks. So we looked at 45 US banks and downloaded their iOS and Android apps, and we ran them through our Z3A advanced application analysis. So the analysis looks at the different privacy settings. So the privacy focuses on access to user data, contacts, device identifiers, serial numbers, things like this, device IDs. The security is really the construction of the app. How well is it constructed? How well does it communicate? How well does it store data? And then looking at those type of aspects. So each one of these reports, some of the shorter ones are 40 pages. Some of the longer ones are 70 pages as you come up and look at all these findings. So really what we did was we tried to summarize as best to our ability on what is inside of this report. And then we plotted all of the bank's applications together so you can kind of see how you rank amongst your peers. And then we did look at the OWASP. So we looked at the OWASP Mobile Top 10. You can see here the iOS results. If you can look at the platform usage, insecure data storage, insecure communications, and then 100% of them failed for reverse engineering. So most of them are exposing, function names. They're exposing source code. They're exposing some type of, code exposure or connection that forces them to fail, right? So, most of them are available to code tampering. If you look at some of the other, cryptography, insecure authentication, most of the banks are doing a pretty good job on authenticating the user. So no real, concerns there. Encryption, doing a great job with encryption. The data storage is a concern. We've seen some people, posting data just online. You see, I think it was a couple of days ago, there was another app that was posting information online, JCrush, I think it was. It's not a mobile banking app, but they did expose usernames, passwords, very explicit messages that were meant to be private. So we look on the Android side, same type of results. Most are susceptible to reverse engineering, insecure data storage, things like that. So the Android side, a little bit better. From a broad perspective, what we did is we just took all of the apps and we said, okay, of all the apps, do they pass fail? Across the bottom, you can see the percentage, right? So on reverse engineering, only 5% of Android apps actually passed for reverse engineering. So they were doing some other things that the other apps were not. And so taking a look at what type of permissions that the apps ask for on your device. So, when you download an app, it'll ask you, hey, I need access to the camera, your location, your contacts, your calendar. Those things are pretty self-explanatory. The camera, right? If I want to take, my mobile banking app, I can take a picture of a check and it deposits it for me. It's pretty convenient. Location, right? So, most location services on the devices, they want to limit the granularity of the location, right? So you can have kilometer, you can have 10 meters, you can have fine grain location. A lot of them use the fine grain, and Apple says that this is more susceptible for a navigation app, but obviously, a viable navigation feature in a mobile banking app is where's the nearest bank branch, where's the nearest ATM, right? So things like that. So no real concern there, but it is flagged as, hey, this has location access. Contacts. So contacts is interesting. So we did do payment apps as well. So if I am paying a contact that is in my address book, it just makes it more convenient. I don't have to type in their phone number or their email address. Calendar. I find this one kind of interesting. I don't really use the calendaring in my mobile banking app, but I don't really know why a mobile banking app may want access to my calendar unless that maybe they're going to remind me of a recurring bill or something like that. Maybe bank holidays, something like that. If you have a regional bank holiday. Capture screenshots. This one was interesting. We did find almost 40% of the apps had ability to capture a screenshot. So, if you trust your bank and you think that your bank is doing no harm, then that's okay. But why does it need to really capture a screenshot? You could argue maybe for support services, but again, if it has access, then they can take a screenshot anytime they want. Device ID, we're starting to get into real private data. With device ID, unique identifiers, device serial numbers. Maybe they're using that for some authentication, but as the privacy laws increase, especially with the California Privacy Act in 2020, the serial number is going to be a no-no. So About 8%, 15% of iOS were actually grabbing the device serial number. So I thought that was interesting. And then advertising. So we talked to some of the research team here at Zimperium, and getting their thoughts on whether or not my banking app should be showing me ads, or either looking at my behavior, my browser activity, anything like that, to show me ads. And so we found one app with the Uber SDK in there, and I thought that was interesting. I downloaded this app and took a look at, maybe they're sharing rewards programs with. I don't have I have an Uber app, but I don't understand the Uber rewards program. So there's a function in there called deep links where you can share information. So maybe they're doing that. One app still has the Google Plus SDK installed, so that was deprecated some months ago. So I may want to update that app. And then 16% were using Facebook SDK. Facebook kind of gets a bad rap on privacy. So whether or not your bank needs to read that data, that's up to you. We don't really like the idea, but that is up to you and your specific bank. And then different ad networks, DoubleClick, AdMob, a lot of them were using that. I did download one app and looked at my activity. This was a credit card or payment app, and about every fourth or fifth row of my activity was an ad. And I'm thinking, could they already know everything that I buy? I don't think they really need to show me more ads to buy the same stuff. But again, it's a different issue. The global ad identifier, about 40% of the apps were using this. So they're looking at your activity across channels, right? So they're going to chase you around the web and use your mobile device to identify you, especially if they're grabbing your serial number. They know who you are and what you're doing with that. So a lot of advertising being used in the banking apps. So quite concerning. Another thing that we looked at when looking at the back end was the shared code of all these apps. So what was really surprising that one of the apps you can see here was sharing over 90% of the code with some other app. Now we'll disclose that this is not just our subset. This is not just the mobile banking apps. So if you have an app that has this Android shared code, it could be shared with some other app that's in our system. So in the back end, we saw about a dozen apps were completely coded by themselves. They had 0% shared code. And then you can see as the growth occurs, some of these apps you could argue were almost a copy paste of each other. But think about what is a shared code. So shared code would actually constitute like the MyTech functionality, that is the plugin that provides the picture taking functionality that you can route a check to your bank. This could be mapping functionality, Cordova plugins, things like this. But a lot of this is open source. So we found a lot of this on GitHub. Some of the GitHub code was actually over. It was last updated over 2 years ago. So kind of makes you wonder if your bank is using code over 2 years ago, and that code is open on the internet, and anyone can take a look at it. Are you exposing yourself by using that code? It's kind of a risk reward that you need to take into consideration. So what do all the privacy and security risks look like plotted together? So the privacy and security scores out of the Z3A reports go from 0 to 100. And it's a sliding scale. You'll never go over 100. You'll never go less than 0. But what we thought was, we'll just plot them together and see what they look like. So if you look along the bottom, This is the security risk. So this is when the risk engine looks at the construction of your app and ranks it. It looks at lots of different features, and then it scores each risk. And then it adds those risks together to come up with a cumulative security risk score. So from left to right, right being the worst. So if you're in the upper right-hand corner where it's red, there's definite room for improvement. On the left side, from 0 to 100 is your privacy risk. So what access do you have? And then if you're reading that data, like how well are you storing that data? So from 0 to 100, again, if you're at the top, you are one of the riskier apps. It doesn't really mean it's the worst. It just means you introduced the most risk. So what are you doing to recover? And most banks that we talk to, they say, well, we're already doing all of this. We already have all these SDKs and we have authentication technology. And, that's true. Everyone does all of this. And they try to make mobile banking safer. But, just like a tennis player has a tennis coach, you need to make sure that you're staying on top of your game. So and then what they say is, okay, how do I rank amongst our peers? So we rank them. And so if you want to take a look at, where you rank on this bubble chart, I have my email address and you can contact us at the end of the webinar and we'll let you know which dot you are, and then we'll provide you the report that I'll go over a little bit later. So this is iOS. If you take a look at Android, it's a little bit different pattern. Interesting, there's a big gap right in the middle. So again, if it's, it doesn't mean you're better or worse. This is a ranking, but obviously the more to the upper right you are, the greater area you have for improvement. And the size of the dot is the app size. So this is the app size that we found in the Play Store. So what we're looking at is, okay, do the larger apps or the bigger apps, do they have worse scores? And they do, and they have worse scores because they have more features. So if you have an app that has very few features, maybe I can only do balance lookup or find a ATM. I can't really do any money transactions. Then there's not a lot of code in there, and that app is actually smaller. So they'll be the smaller dot, but you can take a look at this. And what's interesting that the same bank with the Android and the iOS scores, if you take a look at this score and this score, they don't plot in the same area. It's not like one bank is really good developer and one bank is not. There's no pattern there, so that's kind of interesting. So in the back of the report that will be available next week is an obfuscated version of the Z3A report that we looked at earlier. So there's about 45 different pages of the summaries just like this. So what we did is we said, okay, this is US Bank 36X. It doesn't mean anything. If you want to identify your bank, we'll let you know because we have the key. But I picked 4 that will go over here that I thought were interesting, right? So this app implements the IOKit device enumeration API call. So this was famously abused by Uber. So if you remember that people that had deleted or removed the Uber app from their device, Uber was still following them around. That's this function. So I thought that was interesting. But if they want to do that, Apple probably wants you to do another method. And then this app can send SMS messages. It can also capture the receipt of an SMS messages. I thought that was really interesting. It's very uncommon amongst our sample, especially if you're sending authentication codes to your app and the app is just automatically catching that. It's kind of weird. I don't like that. And then this app is being actively targeted by the BankBot malware campaign. So earlier I talked about that 65%, what did we say? 65% of the apps were actually being targeted by BankBot. This is one of them. You can see the OWASP scores on the left, the iOS and the Android, red dot fail, green dot pass, and then the relative security scores. So you can see that have security score of 37 on iOS, 81 for Android, and again, this is a greatly summarized version of a 75-page report that is available through the Z3A. So moving on, this again, we had two apps that use that IOKit device enumeration call, and still I can't believe that is in there. The Android app stores inline API keys and values, so not the most secure. It's not implementing any type of certificate pinning, and then both of the apps fail on the OWASP top 10 number 9 reverse engineering. The Android app, much smaller. You can see that it is green, 25 and 9, so that's pretty cool. And the iOS is a 46. So this puts this right at average. So the average score for security and privacy for iOS was, I think it's like 40 and 61. So right in the middle of the pack. This is this bank US 18J. So this is actually implementing the event kit. So this is the one that has access to your calendar data. So you may want to take a look at what it's doing with the calendar data. Implements swizzling API calls. So the engine flags that as it could be malware activity. Doesn't mean it is, but it could, right? And then can execute commands at the OS level. It can launch other apps, but one of the most amazing things that I found with this app is it uses unsecure data storage. So it actually uses the world writable data storage. So that would make it fail on the M2 insecure data storage, right? So from a security and privacy perspective, you really want to take a look at what you're doing there. And then this app scores an 82, and that's really caused by that unsecured data storage. So moving on, app US98Y. Again, so this one has a lot of advertising in it. It implements AdMob advertising network. But this app is actually monitoring the pasteboard. So anything you copy paste on your iOS device, it sees that. So why would a bank want to do that? Well, if you think about how, again, this is the iOS pasteboard, but how BankBot works is it sends the SMS code to you. It captures that, so it actually has the ability to capture SMS codes as well. But I don't really want to be able to copy paste the SMS code. I want to have to type that to eliminate a bot from attacking me. So probably want to take a look at why this has access to the pasteboard. It's just a shortcut that the developer implemented, I'm sure, and probably should do it another function. And this one, the Android app is actively targeted by the BankBot malware campaign. So I picked this one because it was one of the few that actually passed for the M9 reverse engineering on Android. So if this is you, good job. And then this iOS app on 51B sends query parameters with private information such as the password. So they're just sending your password across in the query. So not the best idea. It could be secure, but the engine flags that as is not the best use of security, which contributes to the 64 score, which is on the is above average. It's on the higher end. This one actually scored the highest security score for iOS, and at 64. So no stack smashing on this one, and it's using lots of HTTP traffic. Interesting that we found the developer's personal email address in the back end of this app. So under HTTP, so it says I even know the guy's name. I think I found him on LinkedIn, and so that was quite interesting. This one is also targeted by bank bot malware, and it grants all types of permission to content provider. You just don't, if it's grabbing content from other providers, where is that providing storing the information? This could lead to disclosure of data. Things like that. So this was one of the worst offenders. So if you are 51B, I'll let you know if you are interested in finding out how to remove the developer's email address from your production app. And then I believe that is all I have for this preview. The report will be available next week. If you do have a question, I'll hang on, or if you want to privately email your question and I can get an answer to you right after this session, you can send me an email, king@zimperium.com. If you want more information on exactly what we're doing to solve for this problem, you can go to zimperium.com/zapp and take a look at our solutions there. But again, the report will be available next week. And we will send that to everyone that registered and attended and answer any questions that we can have. If you have any questions on whether or not your bank is identified in the report, please let us know. Okay, going. So I don't have any questions immediately. I would assume that everyone would like to privately email your question. So please do so, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.